Scrum Accountability and Developer Basics. Considering the three different areas of accountability, product owner, Scrum Master, and developers, for this session, we're going to focus on some of the basic expectations of our developers. First, however, I think it would be helpful to describe what a group of developers look like. Sometimes they're known as a development team within the Scrum team, a team within a team. The number of developers typically is not going to be larger than about 8 people. Now, why would I say typically? Well, because once teams start getting larger, we know that there are some communication problems that show up. There are some concerns about getting through our events. For example, 15 minutes of the daily scrum will be awfully hard to accomplish if you had 12, 15 developers on your team. Also, there's some evidence, if you could search many different places, such as MIT's Sloan School of Management, that indicate smaller teams tend to be better. You may recall Jeff Bezos back in the early days of Amazon. He was the one who came up with the idea that if you cannot feed your team with 2 pizzas, your team is probably too big. So smaller teams tend to be a little more effective. I have found the sweet spot to be about 5 developers, maybe as many as 7. Once I start getting into 8, 9, 10, I'm thinking about breaking into 2 teams. Another aspect that defines the teams that they are cross-functional, meaning that they have the different functions necessary to deliver product associated with the product backlog presented by their product owner. And I like to view developers as full-time in quotes, because I don't expect our developers are spending 8 hours every day focusing on product backlog work. But I am expecting that they're not being split across, let's say, 3 teams. They don't claim membership of 3 different teams. They are full-time dedicated to one team. Now, what about the smaller sized teams? We already know that larger numbers of developers have some concerns associated with them. What about really small teams? I worked in an organization once where they had about 4 or 5 teams of just 2 developers and a scrum master and product owner that was helping multiple teams. What were their concerns? Well, I like to call those teams more fragile. If one team member calls out sick, or if both team members want to take holiday at the same time, you could end up with that area not delivering much, if anything at all, for a particular sprint. But continuing on with what are the basic expectations of our developers? Well, we know that they're responsible for the sprint backlog. That's the plan for the work of the sprint. And we also know that it's a good practice that they could decompose their product backlog items into sprint backlog tasks that are maybe 1 day or less of effort. Why 1 day or less? Well, because we're checking every day and our sprints are rather short. You never want to go more than a day before you understand if the work you're involved in is at risk. So I view that 1 day or less rule as a risk management tool. We also know that they are expected to self-manage. We have a separate session on self-management. You could check that out. They self-manage their own work around how to reach the commitments that they've made while still following standards and procedures. One of those standards could be their definition of done. We expect our team members might have different job titles. There's nothing wrong with having different titles, but they don't address each other by their job titles. There's no subtitles, if you will. We're all part of the same team. We're, in a way, on a level playing field in some regards. We know that our developers are expected to actually do the work, right? They don't point outward about something that someone else was supposed to do, right? They point inward, verifying what they're actually supposed to do and produce. Now, sometimes something is needed from that product backlog for that team that the team cannot produce because they do not have some skill or piece of equipment. They might have to go outside of themselves to get some help, go to another team. In some cases, I might call that internal outsourcing, right? You're asking for some additional help from another area. They're mutually accountable. We don't expect sub-teams to form. If you have a large number of developers, you might see that smaller pods or sub-teams begin to coagulate together. We're watching out for that also. And we know that our developers at the end of the sprint, we expect that they will be the ones that actually show the work. They share what was actually produced. Those are the basics. Now, we have more to say about our developers in another session. That's going to be a little bit more of a practical perspective, but I hope you can look at this fairly short list of expectations and get a good grasp on what to expect from your developers.